Later this week, I'm going to my state's Ren Fair. Oh, that's super exciting. That's something I still haven't gotten around to doing. Because I know that we have, like, at least a couple of them around here, and I have a lot of friends that go. I feel like it's one of those things where, like, the specific aesthetic isn't, like, normally my thing, but it's also far from something I dislike, and it sounds like it's just a really, really cute, cozy time with a ton of fun, artsy stuff to see and buy. But yeah, no, that's super exciting. I hope you have a good time at the Ren Fair. Are you going, like, any kind of all out for it? Like, do you make, like, an outfit and whatnot? Or, I know there are some people that go really hard with that stuff. I did not. I'm too untalented for that. So my trick has just always been, like, whenever I've done anything like, again, like I said, never been to a Ren Fair. But whenever I've done stuff like cosplay in the past, as somebody that's not particularly good at setting up those kind of outfits myself, I'll usually just go for something that's, like, easy to just kind of, like, borderline buy off the shelf, which probably is a little bit harder with a Ren Fair. But, you know, just kind of like maybe there's, like, a really basic kind of outfit you could buy that could get the point across of something like a peasant or whatever, I don't know. Something that fits the vibe. Like, I'll look up a picture real quick. A good example I can think of. Not that I have pictures of the cosplay itself on hand, unfortunately. But one of the only cosplays I ever put together myself was of a character from the fighting game I played, BlazBlue. Because all in all, it's just a guy in a suit. He's not even my favorite character or anything, but it was like... I mean, he is a character I like a lot, just not like my favorite. But it was just kind of like... I did have a friend help me with the jacket a little bit. Which is probably the most that I really cheated, but everything else was just kind of like finding the stuff in a store. I used like a wallet chain for this. I used simple strips of fabric for this that just like went on my hand. And then outside of that, I just like found everything else. Because it, you know, it got the point across well, but it wasn't like a crazy amount of effort. And I thought it was still a lot of fun. I bought a cloak. Yeah, so I think something like that's perfect. I definitely think that counts. But, on the flip side, just like cosplay, it's still exciting to go to those kind of things and just see how much people go all out with it. Yeah, me and my friend are going to be Marceline and Bubblegum from Adventure Time for Halloween. Oh, that's really cute. I like that. I have been extremely lazy with Halloween for a while now, where I just have like a fox Kigu that I just put on. Honestly, I should get a new Kigu at some point soon. Presumably a Squirrel Kigu. Although the last I looked, Squirrel Kigu options were terrible. But I think the current Kigu I have is like pushing 10 years old at this point. And honestly barely fit me to begin with. I am a very tall person and I did not buy a particularly tall, or you know, a particularly large Kigu. I've been able to just kind of like cheat with Halloween plans for a long time, where for most of the past like 5 years or so, my roommate just kind of throws a huge Halloween party every year. So even if I'm not like super duper involved in it, it's just one night where there's like a ton of Halloween happening in my house. Like just people in costume and stuff, and I'll usually let people like hang out in my room, but like with the caveat that it's the chill room where we're just like vibing and maybe watching something on TV or playing something or whatever. Instead of the crazy drunk party house. And then for the past couple years, I've also, the place that I work right now does a yearly, like, pumpkin carving event where my boss literally, like, rents out a, oh boy, oh, there's more than one, where's the other one? But yeah, my boss will, like, rent out a, basically rent out an orchard for a day where they have some, like, space that you can use. And it's just, like, a cute little pumpkin carving day with work people. And then before that, I worked at Domino's for a really long time. And I've just never been much of like a, you know, I don't like drink or anything, so I've never been like a let's find the Halloween adult drinking party to go to. So I probably would never have my own plans like that. But when you work at Domino's Pizza, you basically get paid to trick or treat. Not like literally in the sense that you're going around asking people for candy, but like they encourage you to go in costume, which is really cute. So again, a lot of the times I would just like literally be delivering pizza wearing a Fox Kiko. I'd be delivering 2 Halloween parties, so I'd still kind of get like that fun, silly vibe that people were getting out of the Halloween parties without actually needing to like commit to a crazy overstimulating night of drunk people. And also earlier in the evening is when like kids were obviously trick-or-treating and stuff, so I'd see a lot of silly kids walking around. I'd see all the houses like at kind of maximum Halloween decoration, or you know, if they had their own little silly Halloween gimmick. It was just cute being able to kind of get like the full drive around Halloween night vibe from like beginning to end. Especially because I probably wouldn't have bothered doing something like that on my own time, so I always kind of looked forward to it. And then you also got that funny side of it where like because it was a tip-based job, a lot of people would tip you extra, just 1, because you're delivering to parties, and 2, because they'd like feel bad, like assuming that you really wanted to do something with your night, but that's like what I wanted to do with my night, honestly. I forget if it's specifically 666 or if it's like other stuff, but there's like urban legends with like hotel room numbers where there's like some hotel room numbers that hotels will just skip specifically so nobody can like get the room by accident and have like some kind of fit over it. I wouldn't be surprised if 666 was one of those numbers. I was actually looking that up and found an answer. So I think the thing that I might have been thinking of was what's it called? So rooms numbered 13 apparently don't exist, literally just because of 13 being an unlucky number. And on top of that, apparently some hotels won't even have a 13th floor, and they'll literally just go from floor to... Oh god, I forgot what I was supposed to do. Some hotels will literally just go from the 12th to the 14th floor, just so nobody can be booked on the 13th floor if they consider it unlucky and like a bad omen. Super weird and silly stuff. Yeah, that's just like a weird thing. I like get it for like purely business reasons, but I just imagine like the designers and number crunchers rolling their eyes like, okay, well, we can't have a room 13 because people get all weird about 13. It is objectively better if we don't do that, but whatever. I don't know, I'm just like fascinated deep diving on the subject. I guess a lot of hotels will also skip having the floor 420 or the room 420. Can you guess why? Japan and China have a similar thing with floor 4 and 7, specifically 4. I think 7 is... Oh, yeah, I have heard of that. Or isn't it like extremely close to the word for death or something like that? Oh, okay, that's actually a pretty good point. I was looking into like the whole like is it common for room like hotels to have the room 666, and I saw a comment that was just like, is it is it even possible for hotels to have 66 rooms on a floor? In most cases, probably not. I've honestly just been lost in the zone this past week working on a new VR chat model, which I'm pretty happy with now. I think it's pretty much in a completed spot. Where the base that I use for my model finally came out with like normal clothes, like a shirt and shorts, which they didn't have before. So I kind of took it as an excuse to remake my model from the ground up, and I've been learning a lot about Blender to get it to that point. But yeah, I think it's been paying off. This is like the basically done version of it, as far as like there wasn't a crazy amount of small tweaks I made to the body after it got to this point. Not that there's none, but also since then I've like added a bunch of stuff and like expressions you can switch between and stuff. And I'm a lot happier with it than my last model. My last model, honestly, in a lot of ways, didn't look like anything like me. And this one, it comes a heck of a lot closer. And it has the tooth. The other one didn't have the tooth. That was an important thing that was missing. That's more what my old one looked like, where the hair wasn't quite there. They only really had the hoodie option. Didn't have the outside tooth. Like I said, it looks practically naked without it. So I'm a lot happier with how the new one looks. What do you usually do in VR chat? Never really played myself. A few things. The biggest two, really, is one, it's just cool to go to places and take pictures. Like, especially, whether or not you do have an avatar you're happy with, just doing it, you know, whether it's desktop mode or VR mode, you can kind of go into like selfie cam with it. And the people have remade a lot of well, one, people have made a lot of original places, but two, people have made a lot of like, you know, remade a lot of places from games and stuff like that. And those can be just really fun to explore in first person at all. And also be able to take pictures in. But, you know, being able to explore places that you've been to in games, especially if it's places you like super like or are particularly like intimate with on some level, like a hub world from a game you've played a million times, or maybe a collectathon level you've explored inside and out, like that kind of thing. It can just feel cool to like be there and just kind of walk around it and just have fun vibing, whether it's by yourself or with somebody else. And again, it kind of easily sets you up to do like, you know, set up some fun photo shoots and stuff like that. And then on top of that, there are occasionally social things I do because I have a lot of friends who have it because it's unsurprisingly really popular with furries. With the most active thing that I've done is that well, I don't go to it every Friday. Every Friday there's like a big meetup, which isn't for my friend Kello's community, but it like practically feels like it is because his community is always such a big part of going there every week. Yeah, I don't know, it's just always like a really cute time. Okay, I'll take one more second of hiding the screen because I can pull up a picture of what kind of the vibes are there. But those are just really fun to go to. It's fun to meet people there, whether it's talking to friends that I already have or, you know, meeting a bunch of people or meeting a bunch of new people, or even just like seeing a bunch of names in chats and being like, oh shit, hey, it's that person that I've seen named in a chat like a trillion times, but it's like actually them. Even if it's somebody that I don't personally talk to, like in the chats or at these events. Yeah, that's a tasteful picture. Sometimes people have like slightly spicier avatars, so I'm like, yeah, let's find a good picture that does not have that. But this is like kind of the vibe. Just a bunch, like there'll just be like a bunch of decent sized circles like this, kind of all over the place. Sometimes for better or worse, because if there's like a really, really big one, it can be kind of a computer nuke for some people. But that's kind of the vibe, and that's Caliph there. Not in kangaroo form, but in puppy form, but that's okay. Do you have a VR headset? I do have a VR headset, thanks to Landfill, actually. Where he got the... what's it called? Index, the Valve Index, and just kind of gave me his old one. Which was mostly really funny at the time, because at the time I did not have a computer... not only didn't have a computer that could handle VR, but didn't have a computer that you could even properly plug it into. Because it was a laptop that wasn't set to like interface with it. So even if I like could try some lower end or super low settings games, my laptop was literally not wired to take the headset. So I think I was sitting on it for like upwards of like 2 or 3 years, just being like, thanks buddy, I appreciate the sentiment, even though I literally can't do anything with this. But eventually it paid off when I built a gaming computer, and it felt like I unlocked the ability to use it as soon as that happened, so messing around with it came shortly afterwards. Might have to give it a try someday, but I think I would have to get a VR headset to really get immersed in it. Yeah, no, like, that definitely helps if that's, like, the angle, like, you know. I said the whole thing about, like, you know, going into a video game world you're super familiar with. That's super cool and immersive and fun, but, like, doesn't exactly feel a heck of a lot different in desktop mode outside of just being in first person for it, I suppose. Sometimes it can be a little neat, like, depending on how well a map is made, you can really, like, explore really tucked away areas and whatnot. In a way that feels like you're kind of like breaking the bounds of the original game in a cool way. But that being said, if the idea is to use it for socializing, there is no shame in being in desktop mode or anything. Like, a lot of people who go to those events are in desktop mode. What I think is unfortunately the worst way to go about it, not that there's any shame in it, but is just kind of objectively a bit worst, is the, there is a version for Quest, like the standalone headsets. There's a lot of stuff that is just straight up not compatible with Quest, including avatars. Like, avatars need to be built for it to be, like, compatible with it, otherwise it just shows up with, like, a fallback default avatar. And some worlds aren't compatible on both devices, just because they're, like, too heavy. Because the standalone headsets are basically just, like, beefed up Android devices, I'm pretty sure. Which is cool and clever, but unfortunately specifically leads to compatibility issues. Where being on the Quest is just a worse experience. Like, the MetaQuest headsets don't work with Avatar. Yeah, it depends on the avatar. It needs to be, like, literally optimized for it. Otherwise, it won't show up. But it's cool. I think it's cool to just do, like, cute friend hangouts and essentially do the virtual equivalent of taking a walk with them. Or even just going to a cool hangout area and having what feels like a little bit more of a real hangout conversation than even something like a voice chat necessarily is. And it can be cool for, like, bigger get-togethers where people can kind of come in and out. Especially because the numbers can get as big as whatever. Any viewers you met in video chat? Me and Shepard have bumped into each other, but outside of that, I don't think so. Although I guess it kind of loops in on itself as far as, like, a lot of people that have been people who come to my chat are people that either I met through their streams first in their communities, or I literally met through VR chat first, or something along those lines. Like, you could call Kelif a viewer of my channel, but also I literally met him in VR chat first, and he's his own streamer and everything. So, depends on your definition of it. But if we're talking, like, strictly people who have found me through my streams organically, then in that case, at the moment, that would just be Shepard. Definitely when they did this stage on Game Awards, I remember the chat going crazy. Yeah, that was such a cool thing for them to do. I think the only thing that has me, like, not torn necessarily, but, like, getting that moment completely spoiler free was, like, one of the coolest moments of this game for me. And it's one of those kind of, like, for better or worse spoiler moments where, like, on one hand, it probably got a lot of people to play the game because they got, like, the big ridiculous part of the game shown to them through the Game Awards, or even just through the song itself.
Circles?
We sure are. Even just through the game itself getting really popular. Or, you know, the song itself, like, kind of made the rounds in, like, music circles, like, not even gaming circles. And that's cool. But also, again, yeah, like, having no idea that that was coming up made for a very, very cool first playthrough of this game. But that being said, I am always a supporter of, like, I'm okay with having things spoiled for me personally when the spoiler is what makes me experience the entire piece of art. Like, that's what gets me interested. Like, that happened to me with, like, my go-to example always is Final Fantasy VI, where it was as I was getting into the Final Fantasy game, I was kind of getting sold on different ones one way or the other, or not sold on. There are some games that have a lot of people have a lot of infamous things to say about them. But The reason that I ended up getting around to Final Fantasy VI is because I watched a video that, like, kind of just spoiled the entire game. Also, my dog is being very silly about food right now. Anyway, yeah, I watched a video that basically spoiled the entire game. But, also showed me, like, what, like, the final boss theme of the game, which is a pretty famous piece of Final Fantasy music. It's like a fucking 16-minute long 4-part opera song, basically. And I just kind of like obsessively listened to it after hearing it in that video, and I'm like, well, I really want to play this game now. And it's literally because I experienced the entire thing in a video first and thought it was super fascinating. I thought the themes were fascinating, thought the music was great, and I couldn't stop thinking about the game, and okay, I'll go play it. And I'm glad I did, because that's probably my favorite Final Fantasy out of the ones I've played so far. So you know what? If the big ridiculous Herald of Darkness performance gets people into Alan Wake, then I am very okay with that at the end of the day. I was thinking about you yesterday. I had an existential crisis because I realized we've known each other for 10 years. Yep. My, like, weird life benchmark, which is basically directly related to that, is that, God, actually, let me look it up. It's coming up, like, any day now. Smash for Wii U release date. Actually, I guess it was the 3DS one, is where I actually met, like, all of my college friends, you included. Oh, yep, September 13th. So it would have been like a few months after that I bumped into Troy and the others, and then you eventually. Oh, yeah, that's a weird one. It's extra weird because, like, Smash Ultimate looks basically identical to Smash for Wii U, so it just feels like we've been, like, you know, at least in the world of Smash, as, like, using it as, like, a mental benchmark for age, has kind of felt like the same game for a decade straight. That it makes it feel like not a lot of time has passed. But yeah, I think in the grand scheme of that kind of thing too, it's maybe just because I've only made so many, like, I have like one circle of friends basically that I've, oh, thank you. Basically like one circle of friends that I've made since meeting you guys in college, that you guys just still feel like the new friends to me, even though that's like super not true. I guess for greater context to that, because I just kind of rambled about that, basically to him. I met him and a circle of his friends in general, including somebody else that stops by the stream from time to time. I think it was like him and one other friend in college, because it was actually, I think it was Pokemon X and Y that did that thing. Oh, I never actually took the sip. Pokemon X and Y that did that thing where you could, like, see people that were near you. Maybe that was Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, I forget. It was one of the two. Where you could literally, like, see people on your bottom screen that were nearby. And I just saw a couple of faces pop up when I was in the college cafeteria. And I'm like, oh, that definitely means that somebody is, like, playing this game around me right now. And in possibly the bravest moment of my introverted life, I went around and tried to figure out where the people were. And then I found, or no, you know what it was? I think there was like two of them. There's three people. There was two that were sitting at a table together, and I found those two. And then the other person, probably after seeing me go up to the table and saying hi, came up afterwards and said hi. But that was just a cute little moment. And then things just kind of spiraled from there. Like, you know, we were all kind of on the same page with a lot of the games we liked. And then when Smash 3DS came out, we all started playing that together, like, pretty non-stop. And then eventually we just kind of had a moment one day where we were like, we should look into going to a tournament, even though I know nothing about tournaments. It just sounds like fun. We're obviously all having a lot of fun actually getting better with each other. And that is pretty much how I got into competitive fighting games. I won't go on that entire story from here, but because at that point I'm kind of rambling. But yeah, long story short, whatever 3DS Pokemon game that was, whether it was X and Y or Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, technically changed my life in a ton of ways, including meeting a bunch of really cool people and showing me how cool local gaming communities were. And I think that's pretty cool. So what do I play usually besides this one? Oh yeah, so I kind of jump around all over the place. I mostly use streaming as an excuse to just replay old games that I like a lot. Actually, you know what? I was just looking at this the other day. I wonder if I can find it. A while ago, I made one of those like top 25 game lists, which are always hard to make really accurate because that's the kind of thing that changes all the time. Even right after I made the list, I was like, I don't totally think this is like my top 25 favorite games of all time. A lot of games I like tend to be either more atmospheric or more action, like stylish games. So I like a lot of like fighting games, things like Devil May Cry, things like, along those lines. Horror kind of falls under the atmospheric umbrella. And Resident Evil 4 is honestly a pretty good mix of the two, where it's a very action-heavy game with a lot of really great atmosphere to it, where I don't necessarily love horror as a genre. I'm not a big fan of playing games that are just like scary for the sake of scaring you, but I really, really love when games are good at building good atmosphere, and good horror games are phenomenal at that, and I'm glad that I eventually realized that, because it's a genre I've started to get into more and more as like the past like 5 or 10 years has gone on, because I was way too much of a baby to play that stuff growing up. So this is like, I was making a new one of these actually, and this is still kind of a mess, but this is kind of like the vibe of some of my favorite games, and honestly a pretty good representation of the general kind of stuff that you'd see around my channel. And like, I played the new Nier, I played Phantom Dust. I haven't played Mother 3, but I'd love to play that on stream at some point. Same with Majora's Mask. Literally just played Alan Wake 2. Colorful, stylish games that are good at atmosphere are also totally under my umbrella. Banjo-Kazooie, Sonic. I'm a Sonic Unleashed believer. It's not everyone's favorite Sonic game, really, but I'm a big fan of that. Nights into Dreams and Nights Journey into Dreams. Ooh, my guys are going crazy. Easily one of my favorite games of all time. Yume Tuki, as I was just talking about that. It's like a Yume Nikki fan game, and Yume Nikki is just like pure unsettling atmosphere. Devil May Cry, I mentioned that. Mega Man, another perfect example. BlazBlue and previously Smash were kind of my favorite fighting games of all time. BlazBlue I'll stream occasionally because it's the game that I actually play more actively, competitively. And sometimes I just like showing people like random games that nobody's heard of or cares about but me, like Pac-Man 2 The New Adventures for the Sega Genesis, or Afro Samurai, the Devil May Cry like action game that like nobody knows outside of maybe the soundtrack, but it's a really good game. This game I haven't played on stream, Quell Memento. It's a puzzle game I like a lot, but I probably would never play it on stream because it'd probably be very boring to watch. It's like a sliding puzzle kind of game with like a really good vibe to it and fun puzzles, but it would be a very boring stream, so that might not ever happen. But anyway, it's a little hard to describe like exactly what I play because I kind of just jump all over the place, but hopefully that kind of paints like a picture. I just think games are neat. I think gaming as an art form is really cool, and the stuff that I like in it just has a lot of really excuse me. I don't know. There's just a lot of really cool weird games out there that I like getting the chance to show people. But I watch based on the streamer, not what games we're playing. So I'd watch you play a sliding puzzle game. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a pretty... for the most part on my end, I pretty much only ever watch streamers that are like friends or at the very least acquaintances. Like maybe people I've met in other people's streams or in like VR chat meetups or something, where I'm like, oh hey, you're a cool person, I would listen to you play something for a little while, that sounds cute and fun. And also I know that we can have good conversations with each other. Saturday was my roommate's Halloween party, which was fun, but it was a little, I mean, it's always like a bit overstimulating because I'm in a 3-story house and most of the party itself is happening on the first floor. And I will usually find myself, like, more or less avoiding the first floor because it's a little too drunk crazy for me, and I get pretty overstimulated by that kind of partying pretty fast. Which sucks, because I do like some of his friends, and, you know, a lot of them play fighting games, including BlazBlue, so it's, well, it'd be a good opportunity to, like, hang out and mingle with some cool people. But the one thing that I guess made it a little bit different than most years, because that's basically how every year goes, but I don't actually mind that. I'll just hang out in my room, and usually people kind of float in and out. But this year, a lot less people that, like, knew me went to it. At least on, like, a more personal level. Like, usually there's a bunch of, like, people that, like, me or Whimsy know pretty well. Like, their brother, or, like, friends that we've had since childhood together, or, you know, at least high school or whatever. My social batteries drain very fast and stuff like that, but it's fun while I'm energized. Yeah, and it's weird. I think part of it for me isn't even a social battery thing. I guess it's an interesting comparison that I've even been kind of doing in my head lately, where stuff like that overwhelms me fast, and I think a lot of it is even just like the noise and like the energy and maybe the alcohol to some extent. Not that people drinking bothers me at all. I don't have any hang up about that. But it can just get really rowdy and loud pretty quickly into a night like that. You know, and people are, you know, mingling back and forth, calling to each other across the room. And I think it's something I've noticed with things like the VR meetups, where that stuff is, well, so much more under your control. And also just so much harder to do in the first place, that even if it's like a bunch of people drinking, like it can only get so like loud or crazy that I feel like I've had like, I could be at an event like that literally for like hours in a night, and it doesn't get to me the same way as being in my own house party downstairs for like a few minutes does. Depends on the energy though, obviously not everything is like that. And there's more overstimulating environments that I do totally fine in, like, you know, big fighting game tournaments where there's 12 million consoles and arcade sticks clicking and clacking, and it's totally valid if somebody doesn't want to stand around all that, but that doesn't seem to get to me. So I don't know. Just interesting. Oh, actually, duh. Speaking of mana games, a new mana game came out really recently, and it's actually pretty dang good. It is called Visions of Mana. And if you played or seen anything about the Trials of Mana remake that came out recently, it's basically making a second game that plays similar to that. I did see a few mana games popped up on Game Pass. Don't know which ones they were, though. If I were to guess, it was probably the Trials of Mana remake, which came out like a few years ago, which is the game I was just talking about. Also possibly the Collection of Mana, which is basically a remake of all, or like a re-release collection of pretty much all of the older games, minus one or two. I don't know. I have a weird relationship with the Mana games, where it's one of the first ever, like, really long games I played outside of a Zelda game growing up. I have a very, very huge attachment to the overall style of the games. Like, when it comes to anime style, I'm not, like, usually... I don't dislike anime styled stuff, but I don't usually connect with it as much as I do with something that's, like, a bit more stylized. And I feel like the Mana games were, like, very influential to my sense of style, and probably even my own character design. Or, you know, my own persona design. This is like a piece of art from like the newest Mana game, where I feel like, and then this is like the collection of Mana where it's got characters from all the games. I feel like this series just does a really awesome thing where there's a really heavy focus on nature, and the nature has this like really hyper realistic vibe to it, where like emphasis on realistic, where it just feels like very real places that are just like very lush in a way that's like, that's where like the hyper comes in. It's very like hyper lush. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And I really love the focus on nature like that. And even the character designs are also very saturated, where it's not like they're not very anime, but they kind of like sidestep it in this weird way by just, I kind of like fighting game characters do sometimes, like BlazBlue characters, where it's not like they're not very anime, but the way that they really lean into the saturated colors is just something that I think is like really nice. Also, there is no doubt in my mind that the Mana series planted a couple of furry seeds, so to speak, where this is a very vital part of the first game's story and the thing that you use to traverse around the world. And there's a bunch of enemies that have this kind of energy to them, which is just really dang adorable. And even the newest game honestly leans into it way more than I expected. Let's see, we got one tail, two tail, three tail, and you've even got one of those like flying guys as a party member. I have a crazy amount of respect for the Mana series, considering it does not do a whole lot right outside of a sense of style. So I guess that's part of the reason I was so hyped on the Trials of Mana remake coming out, because I was like, did they finally do it? Did they make a good Mana game that's not just me accepting it for what it is because I like the vibes? And then the newest game was them building on that, and it has... They have definitely just made an even better game, so I've been really enjoying my time with it.